received over the years. And as I'd sit in the yard, I'd think about those kids. And then I used to do a little artwork, uh, and I did some artwork about those crazy Carolina kids. So I was thinking about putting a book together with something with those letters and surrounded by some anecdotal stories,
Mhm.
uh, you know, like you and I have talked about, and a lot more toned down than some of the ones we have talked about.
Well, they were younger kids, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And you
But anyway,
corresponded with them, right?
oh yeah. But the thing was, when she stopped by, it did tweak my imagination. But
Mhm.
she was talking about, when we first talked, she was talking about her slant was, she wanted to know about the girlfriends and all that, as women are, they want to check into that stuff. And I was more interested in talking about, the journey and some of the stories, and throwing in, I mean, not throwing in, but including, some lady stories. But I guess it evolved between you and I and her when as we progressed a little bit, because I wasn't really sure about it. I was a little nervous about sharing all these, stories, because I didn't know what would come up, or if I hurt somebody, or, whatever, or how they affected someone. Yeah, I was a little nervous about that part. But then, as you started, doing some drafts and showing me what you were going to include, and then we decided what not to include, which was probably more important. Uh, yeah, I was more comfortable with it. And then, I'm real happy with the outcome. Absolutely happy.
Yeah, I should be out front that uh, I wanted to. We agreed that I was going to tell your story. I wasn't going to, look to do exposés from 1965
Right.
or anything like that. And you wanted it to be a fun read for the readers, and you had a lot of fun stories to tell. So that's why it worked, I think.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride, and you, you absolutely, have shown it.
So you were one of the things that I think made me think it was more than just something slight was when I got into the whole Catasauqua region in the 1960s, and what a different world. I got fascinated with what a different world it was, 1960s, 64, from what we see today, both in basketball and the way people lived. But uh, when in high school, you were picked as a parade high school All-American in 1964. If they hadn't changed the rules, you would have been on Ed Sullivan's stage 2 months after the Beatles did
How
their
about
debut
that?
on that very stage. Um, every college wanted you. How did you? And it sort of came down to Carolina and Duke. How did you feel about the two recruiting visits to those two schools?
Well, the two visits were kind of like diametrically opposed, because Carolina was, party campus, and Duke is, more serene and serious
Mhm.
and gothic and stuff like that. But I did respect the Duke coaches and the players that were there, and how they, they went about their stuff. But then I just fell in love with Carolina's spirit, basically, and the campus. I felt really at home there, and and then when I brought my parents down, they felt the same way. They didn't go to Duke; they just came to Carolina, and they felt very comfortable there and welcome. Matter of fact, they had the marquee at the Holiday Inn said, "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. J.J. Miller." And that blew, from people from a small town, when they come in and their name is on the marquee of a hotel, they were pretty impressed. And then the bathtub was filled with beer. They were more impressed. So, but they still wouldn't. They wouldn't commit to either school. They just said, "It's your decision, Larry." Which, to this day, I respect all that about them, that they would not even they told me what they felt about each school, and it was both equally or mutually praising each school.
Mhm.
But they wouldn't say which one they wanted me to choose. They said, Larry, it's your decision. You're going to have to live with it the rest of your life. And so you do what you got to do. And that was uh, unreal on their part.
Yeah, and you had a big effect very quickly. One of my challenges in writing this was describing the effect you had on the basketball court when there's very little videotape, there's no ESPN then, it was only through newspaper reports and things that I got the sense of what kind of a player you were. And so I want to read a little section from another player who was a fan of yours, okay? And this is in your junior year when you go, you guys are on a winning streak and getting hot for the first time with the class of '69 playing with you now. The team's reputation preceded them when they arrived at the Tampa Invitational Tournament, along with Columbia, Florida State, and the Citadel, featuring a 5'11" point guard named Pat Conroy. 35 years later, the visceral impression the Stars made on the writer of The Prince of Tides, Great Santini, and Beach Music and other Southern classics was full upon him at the writing of his memoir, My Losing Season. I'm quoting now. Before going into the locker room to suit up, we watched the Tar Heels warm up. I studied 2 players and 2 players only. I had seen the ethereal and vastly gifted Bobby Lewis play for St. John's in Washington, D.C. He had extraordinary leaping ability and moved on the court with all the presence of a young king. Then my eyes moved to number 44, Larry Miller, who fired jump shots from the corner, a darker, more brooding presence than the sunnier Lewis. They were the stars of the tournament, and all eyes in the building were studying their every move. Miller and Lewis together on the same court blended like balsamic vinegar and the richest olive oil. Miller's darkness matched Lewis's lightness and speed on the court, and their congruent talents made everyone around them better basketball players. So hello, Bobby Lewis, and hello, Larry Miller. I salute you from the secret place to which lost nights go. I tell you how splendid the 2 of you were that night and the next night and all through that long season. I've never forgotten the dark fire of Larry Miller or the breathtaking swiftness of Bobby Lewis, and I did not deserve to be in the same building with them. So you have other memories of that tournament as well. What happened later that night when you went upstairs with some buddies and found a girls' school on the 13th floor?
Yeah. What are the odds of having a girls' school on the 13th floor of your hotel and finding it? Yeah, we just wandered up there. We were just having a few and just kind of celebrating. And we ended up in that girls' school. And later on, we were sitting on the ledge, just enjoying the evening view. I mean, actually sitting on the ledge of the window, on the windowsill, with our feet dangling, and spilling beers and just having a good old time. And talk about nightmares that could have been. Sometimes if you look back and say, maybe we were pretty stupid.
Well, you've been commended in some cases of living your off-court life with the same abandon that you played with, but in a lot of cases, like with cars, you actually had some pretty risky incidents.
Yeah, I had quite a few. But, I didn't live like that. I just lived for the moment, basically.
Okay, yeah. Then your senior year, this is the second ACC championship that Dean Smith won, and you guys are playing the finals against NC State, which had just won the most hideous of all slowdown games. They won the game 12-10 to knock off Duke, and I think the score was 4-2 at halftime, which obviously there was no shot clock in those days. And I want to read something that Charlie said. Against the Tar Heels, State again tried to keep it low scoring and trailed by only 5 at the half. The All-American captain wasn't having that, though, in his last ACC game, and did something unprecedented. Miller asked Coach Smith and the assistants to leave the dressing room so he could speak to the team. Ask Larry these days what he told the guys, and he'll crack probably where we were going drinking after the game. But Charles Scott, in the biggest game of his young career, recalls, I zone out everything when I'm playing, but I remember he kept saying, act like we're down 13 all the time. In the second half, Larry just took over. We went ahead, but we kept playing like we were down. He made us play desperate. The Heels' desperation trampled State 56-24 in the second half, and the 37-point margin of their loss remains the largest ACC tournament in title tournament history. And they pulled you out of the game with 5 minutes to go. A few days later, Larry won the ACC Player of the Year award for the second straight year, remaining the only Carolina player ever to claim that award, that distinction. Remarkably, except for his sophomore year at UNC, the teams that Larry Miller played on had won a championship every year he ever played basketball, beginning in middle school at the boys' club. Then we go on to 5 nights later, Larry got out of the late class and walked straight across campus in what could have been Memorial Hall, where Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels were performing a concert. Seats had been saved for the basketball team in the front row, and all was cool until the singer announced a dance contest, inviting a challenger from the audience. It took only a nanosecond before the crowd started chanting, Miller, Miller, and then they sent a girl up too. Then Ryder picked a band member and another girl, and the contest began. Talk about coming off the bench cold into a hot fire, Larry recalls. They start playing funky Broadway or something and we're dancing, and then I call out, hey, Mitch, you got something with a little more life in it? So then they play Devil with a Blue Dress and we're dancing, and then it's time to vote. First, Mitch held his hand above his equally famous bandmate and got a polite round of applause. Then he held his hand over Miller's head and the crowd exploded with cheers. The singer of the number 4 song in the country turned to stare along quizzical beat. Who the hell are you? The captain of the number 3 team in the country just smiled. So I love that. I love a star upstaging a star. So after that season, you sign a pro contract with the LA Stars and you go out to Hollywood, the land of celebrities. So, and you're doing more than just playing basketball. The team set you up on the dating game. Tell us about your appearance on the dating game.
Yeah, actually they did. The team didn't do the setup. It was, I'm not sure. I think it was my agent or something like that, because I was studying at Universal Studios in acting class, and they set up several things. I was on a couple of the shows, Joey Bishop, just some of those shows that were, didn't mean anything. They were just fun shows. But the dating game, there was 3 of us. I didn't know the third guy, but the second guy was Bobby Warren, was one of my teammates. And it was 3 guys, 1 girl, and then the girl picked me at the end. And so I went over to hug her and stuff like that. And I asked her, do you have a boyfriend? She said, yeah, I do. I said, well, tell you go on a trip with him, because I'm a pro basketball player, and the date that they said I could go, we have games that weekend. So I politely gave her my, that option to use the trip. So then a couple of weeks later, I get a call from her agent, who thought because I didn't want to go on a trip with her that maybe I wasn't interested in women. So I politely thanked him for his interest, but I moved on from there. So I'm the only guy that wanted a guy on the dating game.
Okay. And you also ran into Jim Brown out there.
Yeah, literally ran into him. I was at a couple parties on a Saturday, I believe it was, and we were up in Beverly Hills, and I ran into Tim Brown, the running back from Philadelphia and Baltimore, I believe he was. But nice guy. I knew him from before. So he said, you want to go up to Jim Brown's house? And I said, oh, sure, I'm not doing anything. So I went up with him, saw Jim Brown at his house. He had a lot of ladies around the pool, I should say scantily clad, very scantily clad around the pool. And he says, I have a one-on-one a basketball court outside. He said, I play a lot of games up here. And I heard about that because he had played with Cookie Gilchrist, who was a 260-pound fullback back then. And they were playing, and Jim basically threw him off the side of the hill. So we played a game, and you got to understand, I was partying all day long. So I wasn't planning to go into a basketball game against a great athlete like Jim Brown. And literally the first game, he beat the crap out of me physically. And, we played another game. I said, Jim, you want to play one more game? So then I actually, got serious and won the game. But it was a lesson well learned. Home court advantage is absolutely true.
I think you were smart to lose the first one, just to be respectful.
Well, that's exactly right. But then his hospitality was incredible. We sat around the house and sat around, had a great dinner. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And then, okay, so then I want to sort of keep moving so that we can get through most of your career. You came back to the Cougars, and while you were in North Carolina, you got involved with NASCAR. You were there at the early days, really, before NASCAR was the big deal that it is now. Can you tell me something about the beginning of that?
Yeah, actually, I had a friend named Leonard Lay, who was a writer for Motorsports magazine, and he introduced me to the sport because my absolute first race was at Rockingham, North Carolina, and this was while I was still in school. And he invited me down for one of the races, and I was at the race, and he called me over to the pit area and said, at the next pit stop, meet me right here, at which I did. And then when they pulled into the pits, we jumped into the back of the pace car, and dove down on the floor. And he said, don't look up until I tell you to. So we're actually on the race car. During the race, we're in that pace car. And so when they get ready to start, he said, pop up now. And we looked up, we're going about 130 miles an hour, and these cars are right behind us. And then we pull into the pits, and they zoom by us. But that was my first experience at a NASCAR race, to be in the racetrack. So naturally, I got excited about it. And then we went up to Charlotte, where he was based. And then I met a guy named Richard Howard, who had the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And I got to be friendly with him. And then I started getting pit passes. And actually one of the races, I drove the pace car. And I had the lady on the back seat of me, sitting on the back of the seat on the near the trunk area. And we're going at 10 miles an hour because the Clydesdale horses were right behind me. And they said, strictly go 10 miles an hour because that's the horses, they understand that pace. But then we started to go into the pitch of the racetrack, and it's about 60 degrees or something like that because you can't see out of the back mirror. And then the car started to drift down the thing. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to turn the car over here in front of 90,000 people. So I had to hit about 100 miles an hour to keep it, from sliding. I thought I was going to turn over. It probably wouldn't have.
Dump the queen.
I got hooked on it. So I went to a lot of events after that. And then actually, we almost started a drivers union because they were the only sport that didn't have a union or yeah, basically.
Yeah, you were in the business with Richard Petty, right?
Yeah.
The head of the Professional Drivers Association.
Right, that's right, we were.
And
very interesting time. But it turns out they didn't need a union, but, we were looking out for them.
And then later in your, a year or two later, the Cougars had a game during Richard Petty night to honor Richard Petty. And what happened that night?
That's when I broke the scoring record at 67 points. He even told me later on, he said, you know, it started out to be my night, but it ended up being your night.
I like that. He sounds like a good guy.
Oh, he was, yes.
Okay, so then you uh, after you've played in the ABA, you retire to Virginia from basketball, and you go to Virginia Beach. You have a nice real estate career, and in '82, you get the impulse to go down to New Orleans for the Final Four, and you're flying down with your buddies, and after the game that the Tar Heels won, you're on Bourbon Street, and everybody's recognizing you, right?
Yeah, pretty much so. Actually, we didn't fly for the Final Four. We flew down for the final game because
Okay.
we were watching it at Monterey's in Virginia Beach. And the guy said, if Carolina gets to the finals, you want to go down? And I said, well, I'll think about it. So about 5 guys wanted to go down there. So this is after the game. I called Leonard, who was down there covering the game, and he got me 5. I didn't call Dean Smith because you know, he wondered why I didn't call him, but I didn't want to bother him, you know, during that kind of event. But he would have definitely got us tickets. But I called Leonard. He got me 5 Louisville band tickets, which I purchased from him. And then we sat 3rd row right behind the basket.
Mm-hmm.
But then after the game, we were walking down Bourbon Street, and everybody recognized me, and they were stopping me. They threw a coat over me so we could get, you know, to the next bar. But they got me a drink, 7 shots of something. You know, you know how New Orleans is. There's nothing easy.
And then about a year, well, I don't know, 6 months later, at some point, Frank DeFord writes an article in Sports Illustrated that got you in trouble. You got the call from Dean Smith about Frank DeFord's article about that.
Absolutely, yeah. He was mad at me because they were covering the game, right? They were talking about the game.
Right.
And then about the second paragraph, my name was mentioned. And I said, Coach, I didn't have anything to do with how he wrote the article. But he said it took away from my players. And I said, I couldn't help that.
Yeah, because DeFord saw you down in New Orleans and
yeah,
some of it on you rather than.
Well, he knew the story. Yeah. Actually, he was interviewing me at Monterey's. So he got the story firsthand.
So you become very comfortable back in Catasauqua, and a lot of your old buddies are there. Tell us about your funeral.
Oh, absolutely. We were sitting at McCarty's bar, which you have been through.
Mm-hmm.
And once somebody came up and asked me, you know, he quite simply something about, you think when you die, anybody's going to come to your funeral? And I said, you know, I don't really care. And then the owner of the bar says, well, why don't you have your funeral? And I looked at another guy, and, you know, I'm impulsive. So we said, all right, let's do it. And just like that, we decided to have my funeral. So we built a coffin, you know, in my basement. My buddy was an upholsterer, so we did the coffin. We outfitted with bath handles, 4 bath handles, which you couldn't carry by those handles, but they looked pretty. And then we had a funeral, which we actually had me in the coffin at I already have a site, so I wasn't doing anything wrong. And then we moved it across the street to the Jed and had a what do you call it? A wake, I guess you would call it. And we brought the coffin over there, and you know, everybody was squeamish at first, but then by the end of the day, everybody was having their picture taken in the coffin. I actually had I hired a stunt guy to go in there for the opening of the party with a suit on, and you know, he played me for a good half hour.
He was the stunt body?
Yeah, he was. But then afterward, everybody was in it. So.
And then a year later?
Oh, the resurrection.
Yeah.
Wow. That was just another whim, just a reason to have a party. I came back from, the dearly departed.
And
And
looking
you
good.
had more people at the resurrection, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Pete.
Hello. For everybody out there, I'm Peter Mock. I'm the buyer here at McIntyre's, and I think we're going to take some questions right now. Great stories, but I think we need some questions in here now. And we're going to probably take 2 or 3, and then I'm going to invite one last person to come on and do it live. Don't know who it is, but we're going to figure it out. I'm just going to look through all these different questions, and I'm just going to read them out. So the first one is from John Bernos. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but he has a few there. His question is, what is your favorite memory from UNC? Also, who was the toughest player you played against? And if that's not a virtual background behind you, do you really play the piano?
No, I actually like to look at it. No, I don't play it. I'm sorry. It's one thing I never did.
Okay, so what is your favorite memory from Chapel Hill, from UNC?
I couldn't do that. I mean, I really couldn't. Obviously, the ACC tournament final games were the most intense and the most satisfying. And for someone who's never been in that situation, and obviously there aren't many that have, the intense pressure of that moment and the fact that you won and that all that is released, there's a feeling you will never, I couldn't explain it to this day, but it took me 24, 36 hours to get over it. Even that next day, I'd get in the car, put the top down, and just ride for hours in either direction just to feel the euphoria that it came with. And those days after the tournament were usually beautiful Carolina days. So those 2 moments alone could make a lifetime. And as far as the toughest player I played against, I'm sure that question is pretty tough to answer, but Wesley Unseld, without a doubt, was the toughest player that I ever played against. And he proved it by winning the Rookie of the Year and the MVP in the NBA at 6'6" center.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching him play a lot.
Yeah, he could guard me. So
yeah, wow. Okay, here's a good one. This is from Rob, and he asks, "Can you talk about your relationship with Dean Smith?"
Well, absolutely. It was. Sometimes you would say it was contemptuous. Sometimes it was strange. Sometimes it had its moments. But I think those came from the fact that I contested some of the things he wanted us to do, but not one of them had to do with coaching or intensity or practice or anything like that. It had to do with my lifestyle. And I worked harder than anybody else could imagine. But sometimes he questions. He wanted me to go to church, and he said, "Well, if you were at home, wouldn't you parents make you go to church?" And I said, "No, they wouldn't." And then he kind of backed off of that because we used to have to go to church and get programs from the church and bring them to him, and which I thought was kind of hypocritical. And so I used to have Billy Cunningham get him or one of the other players and give me to turn into him. And finally I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to be that hypocrite. And finally I just said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just not going to, because, I have my own beliefs and you can't force me to, be, religious. But the other things were the way I lived my lifestyle, which was, I lived on the edge once in a while, and I like to party, but only after certain goals were accomplished did I enjoy partying, And I told some of the guys that came there that if you come here, you work hard and you play hard. And that might have been a little bit at odds, but we made it work very well. And then for years after, he's one of the greatest people I've ever met. For years after, we always met up. I'd meet him at games somewhere. He'd always ask my parents, and we always kept in touch either by phone call, met for lunch once a year at least, or, letters, like I said, or visits. But we always stayed in touch. He was a big part of my whole life.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say that, listening to this answer, that one of the best things that Stephen did with his book was he captured the honesty that you lived your life with. And, you didn't compromise yourself at all, ever. And I think he captured that very well. And it comes out in the book. But at the same time, you're a good human being that really looked out for people and cared about people instead of becoming just a star in their house and so on. But Stephen did a great job capturing that. And I think that is a true compliment to you, that he was able to get that, because, you are who you are.
Yeah, he has. And I appreciate the fact that he was able to, tell that story.
Yeah. One more, and then we'll bring on, the live questionnaire. So the last one is, I don't have a name, but was there really a triple overtime game, maybe versus Duke, that you played all 55 minutes? He thinks it was maybe 67 or 68.
Oh, it was probably Duke, yeah. Yeah.
Was that a tiring game?
Well, actually, I probably lost 17, 20 pounds during that game.
Wow.
Because it was toward the end of it was the end of the season, the regular season, and it was over at Duke, and it was hot. And the
Cameron Sweatbox.
Yeah.
Oh, in fact, I should have explained to everybody, our technical difficulties were with a bunch of Dukies trying to come on and crash in the party. We had to start all over again. But anyway, okay. So how about one more question? And the person that we're bringing on, if you can just introduce yourself and just, have a good question. Let's hope so. So we're trying to find them.
Yes, and there you go.
Here you are.
Say hi. Say hi.
Hey there.
Bobby.
Hey there. This is Bobby Lewis, buddy. How you doing? Congratulations on the new book. You guys, you and Stephen did a fantastic job. I enjoyed every minute of it. Didn't put it down the minute I got it. Read the whole thing. And I thank you for the signed autographed book and the nice words you said. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, it was my pleasure. You're looking
Thank you
good.
so much. Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Listen, I wanted to tell you this many, many years ago. I never really got a chance. When you came to Chapel Hill in 1964, you were the difference between us winning and losing. I could have scored lots and lots of points, but we would never have won. When you came, it made the difference between winning and losing. We went to Coach Smith's first Final Four. You brought us there. I left. Hall of Famer Charlie Scott came. You guys went to the final championship. From there, you took Coach Smith and University of North Carolina basketball and took it to another level. And we all thank you for it. And I'm just so glad I could be a small part of it.
No, you were a big part of it, not a small part. You were a major, major part. You're the reason I came there.
Well, you know what, Larry? I was thinking about the same thing. The reason I went there was because of Billy Cunningham. I was hoping the reason you came there was because of me. And I know the reason Charlie Scott came there was because of you. So it just funnels itself all the way down, snowballs down like that. I think that's how it really happens.
It really did happen that way. And then Rusty and them came because of all of us. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Tell her you talked to Tom.
Listen, another thing about the book, which I really want to thank you so much for. You know how close Tom Gauntlet and I were all through school, and we were close even 25 years later after school. Just and we weren't close anymore. And I probably hadn't talked to Tom in 3 or 4 years. And last week I got a phone call. And it's Tom Gauntlet reading your book. And he said, he used to call me Louie. He said, Louie, let me tell you, I can remember the great times you and Larry and I had at Chapel Hill. I just had to call you. And we talked for about a half an hour, and we're back the same as if we were always friends. And I'm going to meet him after this pandemic down at his beach house. And I just want to thank you for that also, because that's another part of the book that you did. And one other thing real quick, I'm getting more mail than I've ever gotten, and every piece of mail says, have you read the Larry Miller book? So I appreciate that too.
Oh,
No, you know the good times we had.
well,
We
absolutely.
had some great times.
Absolutely fantastic times. And wonderful, wonderful memory. It's so good to hear from you.
It's been a long time, Larry. It's been over 50 years. I saw you in 68 when you were playing out in LA. And I said, it's been a long, long time. And I didn't go back to Chapel Hill much. And I know sometime in the beginning you didn't.
Right.
So but it's always the so-called family thing. But, we're getting up there, buddy. You're getting close to 75 too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. But
Yeah,
I'll tell you
I
what,
am.
I've never forgotten you over the years. I've never stopped thinking about you and how much you meant to my career in Chapel Hill.
I said hello.
I certainly appreciate it.
Tell me.
What's that? Hey, Larry,
Larry, I wanted to say hi.
this is BJ.
BJ.
You remember BJ? You guys used to dance a lot together.
Yeah, I remember.
She's still here after 54
Somehow.
years.
God bless you. You look great.
Thanks,
Hey,
so do you.
hey, I'm really, really happy for you. It seems like in reading the book, I feel like you really now, you're at peace, you're happy. And that means a lot to me because it's been a long time since we go back to the beginning, and we did party and we had a few brewskis back in those days, buddy. And I'm glad you came to Carolina and didn't go to Duke. That's for sure.
There you go.
Eric, it's really good, man. Really good. You look good. I'm glad. Hey, your hair, you got hair. I got none. But that's what happens.
They won't let me go to a barber because of this pandemic.
Right. You're right. Yeah. Well, I don't have to go. I don't have any, so it doesn't matter. But good for you, man. I'm really, really happy with you, and I have you with the book. Really am.
I appreciate that very much. You don't know how much.
Good, Larry. You take care of yourself, buddy.
God bless. Take care. You too.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. It's great to have you here. And I just want to share something with everybody that Bobby Lewis still holds the record for the most points scored in a game by a Tar Heel with 49 against Florida State.
Yeah.
So, two legends on the same screen. Wish it was in the same room. But we could go on for a lot longer. We've had other people just, logging back in. So, Stephen, if you got any other things you want to share, Larry, if you got a few things you want to share, we can continue if you want. Got the time?
I wonder whether Larry will talk about, he was down in Chapel Hill not long ago at the business school having dinner with Lenny Rosenbluth and Phil Ford and Charles Scott. And he said they had such a good time telling stories that he wished they'd run a tape on it. I wonder if he can remember any of those stories or not, or maybe they're too confidential.
No, actually, we were supposed to start doing some stuff together, but it never came together. But we did have a wonderful time. The four of us just started telling stories about each other's teams and times at Chapel Hill, and it was memorable and marvelous all at the same time. But we never did get a chance to do anything. I guess because of this thing that came about. But that was just the thought that we were going to do some Carolina stories and visit people and share our stories together. But it just never worked. Maybe this will rekindle it.
Yeah, must have been interesting talking to Lenny, who operated under a different coach. And
yeah, Lenny's one of the great people you'll ever meet. He's quiet, unassuming, but he's still, still the leading scorer, I guess, in Chapel Hill. Or
yes,
yeah, still to this day.
I've actually got a quick question. Tell us about Wilt the Stilt, and having him as a coach.
Yeah, that wasn't really a coach. He was just a figurehead, basically.
Yeah.
He didn't even show up for practices, and he showed up for games and stuff like that. They paid him back then $1 million to be a coach, and he actually had no qualifications, or like I said, he didn't spend any time in it. It was just a figurehead type deal.
Yeah. Was that sort of like where you might have started gotten kind of disillusioned with the ABA?
Well, I already had been disillusioned before, because the coach I had before that was Casey Jones and Stan Olbeck, and
Mm-hmm.
they were a pleasure to play for. But the Celtics job opened up, and then they took that, and then Wilt came, and we were playing in a 1,000-seat arena, San Diego State, maybe 3,000 it sat, but you couldn't even make any money if you filled the place up. So it wasn't a really good economic approach.
Yeah.
And you have a coach paying $1 million. It was just one of the situations in the ABA that, turned you off. As far
Sounds like a stunt hire. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So.
Anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything that's not in the book?
Where's Jim Hudok's cabin?
Oh, that one out. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't take you to it today. We had a cabin out in the woods. It didn't have any heat either, by the way, in the wintertime. And I can remember spending time out there with a lady one time, and we were freezing to death. And there was no heat in there, and we had to snuggle all night to stay warm.
Tough.
Scar told me about that place.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun things. Well, you just have to read the book, and then we'll do it again, right?
Yeah. And I would like to show everybody real quick that for all of you who actually did get the book, you will be getting one of these nice signed book plates. I don't know if you guys can see it. Whoops. That one of the nicest book plates that we've got, since COVID started, authors don't sign books anymore. We get book plates. And, most of them are just, a sticker with an illegible signature on it. And here we got a great picture, legible handwriting, and the famous number 44. So if you haven't gotten one, you want one, give us an email, click on our website. We'll be happy to get you one. So, folks, this was wonderful. Larry, it's very nice to finally kind of virtually meet you. Stephen, the same there. Please come down to McIntyre sometime. I'd love to show you the mystery room.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
And this was a good night. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Things will be improved in the future. We're going to kick out the Dukies. We're not going to let those guys crash again. And this has been a good night. So I hope everybody who made it, I hope you all enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you all. It's been a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take care, guys.
Thank you.